Okay, thank you for attending this evening. We are going to open up discussion on the budget hearing, starting, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Ward or Mr. Palenci.
Yep, so I'm gonna turn my mic on, sorry. Want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I know some folks are here for the budget hearing, some folks are here to hear from our art department, some of our students, and some others are here for whatever other reason you might be out here for. So thank you, no matter what reason you're here for. Mr. Palenci and I are going to take you down through the budget plan presentation. There is a copy running up on the screen there. If you do need a hard copy, if you want one after the fact, Mrs. Hensel can provide one to you. You can call or email her in the district office and she'll take care of that. So some important things to notice on page 1. Our budget this year does come with a 0 tax levy increase. The tax levy is the amount of money that the school district collects from the taxpayers. So we have not increased the tax levy. This proposed budget would be the 3rd consecutive year of a 0 levy increase. That means we have not asked to collect more money from the taxpayers, counting this budget for 3 consecutive years. So I'll start by saying any difference you've seen in your tax bill over the last 2, and then if this year, if this budget passes, we do 2 assessments and changes in assessments of your piece of property or the changes of all the properties across the school district, because the amount of money collected from the taxpayers has not changed and is not proposed to change in the budget that's up for the next vote. So I wanted to start with that. But it does increase opportunities for our students, and that's what we're here for. The one thing that goes along with the 0 tax levy increase, and we'll get into it, there is a budget-to-budget increase. I know that's maybe a question of the folks that are here to talk about the budget tonight, so we'll address that when we get there. I want to start with our mission, vision, values, which is page 2 in the presentation, slide 2. That's how we're making decisions. We're making decisions in the best interest of children and balancing that with the needs and responsibilities of our taxpayers. So do know that taxpayers and individuals who don't have children in our school are part of this equation, but certainly our number one goal is provide opportunities for our students so they can be lifelong learners and have every opportunity we want for them, and so they can compete in a global society as they move forward out of school. Number one thing I like to talk about, or make sure I say, are better life outcomes or the best life outcomes for our students. We know they're not all on the path, the same specific path, so whatever path they choose to take or their life leads them, we want them to have the best chance at the best possible life outcomes. Moving on, just some information about our school district. You can see total student enrollment. You can also see the staff that we employ here, both instructional and non-instructional staff. So we are a large employer, and we are a people business, and that relates to budget. So we wanted you to have that information as you're looking at our budget plan when you get ready to come out and vote. Our budget calendar, some of these dates have passed, and some are yet to come, but we wanted to give the whole calendar. These are all statutory dates. They're set by state regulation. So we adopted our budget on April 13th. We mailed our budget notice, that's commonly called the budget newsletter, out on May 3rd, so that should have been to you. If you didn't get one or you want another copy, Mrs. Hensel put a pile of them in the back of the room. Please feel free to take them. Once we get through the budget vote, we certainly don't need a bunch of extra copies hanging around. So if you have a place where you can put some, or you have people who say they haven't received one, please feel free to take them. And if you need more copies than that, she has additional copies up here, and we have additional copies in our office. But everybody should have received one through mail. Tonight is the public hearing as required by regulation, and then our vote is the statutory vote date on May 16th, and that is from noon to 8 in the high school gymnasium. So just some facts. Budget this year, $53,452,809. Budget to budget growth is 8.48%. And again, the tax levy increase, that's the amount of money we collect from our taxpayers. The increase is 0, and this will be the 3rd consecutive year of a 0% levy increase. So budget fast continued. We do have a bus proposition on there. That's buses and vans, vehicles we use to transport students. We are looking to buy 6 vehicles between buses and vans. It's important to know that for every dollar we spend on transportation, we get 90% of that back from the state of New York and state aid. And I do fully recognize that state aid is also money collected from taxpayers, which we all are. But if we don't bring the money back to Hudson Falls, the money will be spent by the state in other communities besides Hudson Falls. You'll likely hear that from me at least one more time. Capital reserve proposition, we're asking the taxpayers to allow us to deposit the residents to allow us to deposit $150,000 into our capital reserve. Voters must vote that money in, and they have to vote that money out. So once it goes in, we cannot expend it without going out and getting voter approval. So it's highly restrictive, but we would use that money in future years to offset building projects. As you know, when you have over a $53 million budget and our 6 buildings, I use our 5 schools, plus our transportation and maintenance building as our 6 buildings, there's always work to be done to keep them of the quality that we need to keep them, so we're providing a quality education for our students. There's also an energy performance contract proposition that's going to be there for folks to vote on. And without voter approval, we can go forward with that work at about an 80 to 85% New York State aid ratio coming back to us. If we get the voters to approve that as well, we get an additional 10% in state aid back on that project. So that's things like boilers, LED lighting and items like that, that we actually, most of that is stuff we had to cut out of our capital project due to cost increases that we saw during COVID from when the project was first priced out. And lastly, we have 2 board seats that are open. They're both 5-year terms, and we received 2 petitions back, one from Dr. Brian Steele and one from Mrs. Megan Borlang, who's out in the audience tonight. Moving on to our goals. Safety is one of our goals. Included in our budget, there's a capital outlay project. That's no additional money out of that budget, but we are looking to prioritize school safety and continue to do so. You can see through our capital project, as you came in here tonight, you saw some construction going on here. If you've been past the middle school, you can see the front entrance there is closed. That's because we're putting new secure vestibules on those 2 buildings during the school year, and over the summer we have new secure vestibules scheduled to be built at the other 3 student-occupied school buildings. Also looking to provide transparency and communication. Happy to answer any questions tonight. We put everything out on the website. One additional thing that did occur this year is Mr. Palunzi and I were invited to a meeting that was held by private residents. We did go to that and speak to the school budget and answer questions for them. We do want to maintain our high expectations for our students and for our staff, and that means we have to have training. We also have to have offerings for our students. And we want to include any priority improvements. Some of the things that we're looking at this year, and you'll hear more about it. Increased physical therapy for students with disabilities. That's a requirement, plus something that we're looking to provide so those students have the best possibility for their best life outcomes as well. Looking to grow positive culture throughout the school district and all buildings. And again, we want to support our staff in professional development, both required and enhanced beyond that, so they can be better educators for our students. Looking out, I see Aaron from the bus garage. Also want to make sure we have appropriate professional development for our bus drivers, including being able to recruit new people and train them properly. Just thinking of one real high need area that we have in our school district and many school districts around the area are facing. So focus on students. Some of the things that this budget will do is increase electives at the high school, also increase electives at the middle school. We're trying to find courses that students can attach to in the high school and the same in middle school, but the more courses we can get, more students, more credit students can get at the middle school, the better chance they have of graduating when they come over to the high school. It's shown through research that the more credit students can get early, the more they can vision themselves graduating a few years from now. So we're trying to achieve that goal of moving our graduation rate up by working with kids at the middle school and having those new opportunities here at the high school. We're specifically adding an additional music teacher, adding sensory stations at the primary school. I mentioned the PT, and we're also continuing to work on reading intervention with our younger students. And one item, folks know that we have a single SRO. We've had a single SRO for several years. This budget, when it passes, will also provide for a second SRO. And that individual will be coming from the Village Police Department. The one we currently have comes out of the Washington County Sheriff's Department. That would give us 2 for our district. We don't plan to assign them based on their jurisdiction, because we have some schools that fall in the village's jurisdiction and some that fall in the county's jurisdiction. We want both of those SROs to be floating between buildings. And I thought that was a good idea before somebody gave me a great way to explain it. The students that we have in each of our buildings come from both the county areas and the village areas, so it makes sense they would see people from both jurisdictions in the buildings they go to. So I want to thank Mrs. Andrikovic. She was the one who said that a while back, and I hadn't even thought of that going down through. Going over to revenue key facts, I want to turn it over to Mr. Palunzi, Director of Business. He's going to take you through the revenue and the approved budget and most of the numbers. That's his specialty, and then we'll certainly I'll be back on for just a little bit, and then we'll take questions from everybody at the end of our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So basically, there's two components to a budget. There's the expense plan and then the revenue. And they have to, in order to have a balanced budget, they have to equal each other. So we have to have the same amount of revenue as we do expense moving forward. There are two major sources of revenue in our school district. New York State aid is approximately 72%, and local taxes is approximately 24%. So that accounts for 96% of the total funding that we actually have come in. Part of the local taxes is the property tax cap. Many years ago when it came in, it was advertised as a 2% cap. It's not really a 2% cap. We'll talk a little bit more, and we'll be able to show you on a chart two slides down. But each year we have to calculate the property tax cap on the state controller's website, which is due by March 1st. We've done that, and it takes into account many different things like your pilots and what your tax levy increased by the previous year, and there's some other items. It's about a two-page calculation that has to be done to find out exactly what your cap is. And as Mr. Ward alluded to, last year the levy did not increase. It was a 0% as it was the previous year. He's coming. Thanks. So as you can see on this slide, this is our revenue. Not much has changed since last year, with the exception of the state aid. Again, that was the piece that the foundation aid increased, and we also did get an increase in building aid too within that. And the foundation aid was an increase that we received, but it was also making us whole. Approximately 10 years ago, nearly $2.8 million was taken from the school district during a state aid cut, mid-year state aid cut, and it's taken this long to get all that money back that was cut. Other school districts got it back quicker. We did not. It took longer to get it. So now it's basically making us whole. So it's allowing for programs to be put back in place that had to be removed many years ago, whereas many of the school districts had that money and were able to run those programs for many years. So you could see the big increase was $4.178 million. Our pilots are dropping a little bit. That's payment in lieu of taxes. Those will go up and down from year to year depending on what pilots we have in place. And then interest earnings is we are starting to get higher interest rates and investments. So we are kicking that up a little bit with a couple different things that we'll actually talk about a little bit in the board meeting from the audit committee, where we are getting higher interest accounts that we can invest money in moving forward. So you can see the total change was $4,178,007 increase over 22-23. This is what I was talking about with the property tax cap. We go back to 2013-14 on this chart. The middle column shows what our tax levy increases were from year to year. And as you can see, the high that we had was 2.0, and we were basically between 1.5 and 1.9. Those years 14, 15 through 20, 21. And then you can see 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24. The levy has stayed the same for those 3 years. But on the right-hand side is the key, and that's what is calculated for the property tax cap. You can see it was as high as over 5% that that the taxes could have been raised, but as low as 1.7. So in no way is it a true 2% cap. I mean, it all depends on all the factors in it, such as the consumer price index, things like that, drive that cap number. And it's pretty much been all over the place over the past several years, anywhere between 1.7 and 5.05. You can see for this year, it was 4.15, and one of the reasons that it was that high is because we've had two previous years where we did not raise taxes. You're allowed to carry some of that money over from year to year moving forward, and that is what kept that cap a little bit higher. The next slide is just is a pie chart just to kind of show you exactly the numbers we've already said. Nearly 72% in state aid, nearly 24% in local taxes and fees and other is 4.3% of our total operating revenue. Next one. And again, this is another way that just to show it side by side. From 22-23 to 23-24, local taxes are staying the same. State aid went up by over $4 million. Our fees and other, these are our fund balances and our refunds. Basically, it's a collection of any other revenue that we get. That's going down a little bit, we're calculating it. And then the total revenue as compared to is up over nearly $4.2 million. As far as now we're going to move over the expenditure plan. When we do our budgeting here and through our workshops, we basically break it out into 4 categories. And then for all of the items for the budget, we have to split that down into 3. But we find it's a little bit easier to work with the 4-part, and then we convert it for all of our publications. So as you can see on the pie chart, there's 4 different areas: general support, instruction, transportation, and employee benefits and debt service. The 2 big ones here are the instructional piece, which is nearly 50%, and employee benefits, which is 36.7%. So when you look at that, out of that budget, 86.6% are in 2 categories that we have. And then you have general support and transportation. General support is basically the administrative piece of it, and transportation is obviously bringing kids to and from school. From there, we break it down into the 3 categories. So you can see administrative, program, and capital. That's the 3-part budget that we have to present each year. And as you look at the $4.1 million increase, you can see relatively quickly in certain areas where it was picked up. If you go down to the bottom under the capital, this is our plan operation, our benefits for the individuals in there, our bond payments. You can see that the bond debt service has gone up $1,030,000. That's due to the capital project that we are currently doing. The debt service payments will start in the 23-24 year. So that's part of our larger increase that you can see. Obviously, the other big one is under instruction. We have a $1.8 million increase moving forward. And then also, when you look at the benefit pieces in each one of these categories, you're seeing relatively large increases there, because one of the things that we got hit with this year was a 10% increase in health insurance. It's been rather low for a couple years since COVID, and what's occurring is now it's catching up now that everybody's going back to the doctors. There's a lot of surgeries and things like that weren't done during COVID, so it takes 2 or 3 years to catch up on the rate. So we're looking at a nearly 10% increase in health insurance, and that was another large one. But when you look at the instruction, that was a lot of the stuff that Dan alluded to falls into that instruction category as we move forward. So again, the transportation purchases, we're looking at 2 66-passenger buses, 1 28-passenger bus, 3 8-passenger vans, not to exceed $450,000. Again, the aidable expenses when it comes to transportation are aided at approximately 90% for the school district. One of the reasons that this number is a little bit higher this year than it has been in the past is this past year, we had 2 32-passenger school buses that we were going to purchase. We were notified that the chassis were not being made after we had the budget vote. So we did not spend all the money that we went to last year. We only borrowed exactly what we needed to get those buses. So one is basically a carryover from last year to attempt to get that bus in this year's budget. So All of this, whatever the local share is on these transportation pieces, are built into our budget. It's not an add-on to the tax levy. They're all built within our budget already, with the $450,000 for the transportation purchases included. And I just want to make sure, when you see that we're buying school buses, we're not adding 3 yellow school buses. We are replacing 3. So 3 will come out of the fleet and be sold or traded, and then 3 will come into the fleet. So we're not going from like 35 school buses to 38 school buses. Gasoline. Is that the question?
You think that was gonna be the question?
How close was I?
Not even. But since you brought it up, where's the revenue for the dispersal of the buses that you retire each year? Where's that come in?
That comes in off the trade.
Where is the revenue in the budget? I don't see the revenue coming back. Is
What
it
line-
right?
what line is the revenue?
Net of trade-in? Or do you have a revenue stream? Does it go to auction, or where's that money coming back to us?
Tim, we trade them?
Okay.
Okay, so what-
Always.
So far, always. Yep. It's something that we're looking at the possibility in the future, if we can find somebody that will pay more than what the trade is in the future. But right now, we're trading them, and the ones that we have here are planned for trades, are all lined up.
Do you ever explore that? Because they used to go to auction. I don't know if they brought more or less, but do you explore those so we make sure we maximize the revenue?
Yeah, we
We
rate,
go to the end of the world to maintain this fleet so well. So they should have value at the end of what we consider the end of their life, the Hudson Falls Center.
yep, and that's one of the things that we're reaching out, we're gonna reach out to companies to see if we can beat those, what the trade-in values are.
Because there's, secondary markets for these in states that aren't as stringent as New York State. They don't require as new a fleet. Unfortunately, some of them in the southern United States, but where there are districts that aren't quite as wealthy as ours. And that's many. And the other question is, since you mentioned fuel, on the 66 passenger buses, what are you buying now? You buying gas, you buying diesel, you buying CNG, what?
The 266 passengers are gasoline.
Why?
I'll have my,
Cost. Maintenance over the years of owning them, it's a lot more expensive to maintain diesel.
That was the opposite.
Right now, your fuel cost is up, you feel it.
But the economy's more,
Right.
you get more miles per gallon.
We do, but looking at the general maintenance over a year, it's about a third of the cost on a diesel and propane, or a propane and gas to the diesel.
Well, we're buying gasoline, not propane.
Yeah, I'm just saying this is what we have now in the fleet is gas, propane, diesel. Right. Gas and propane, it's cost about the same, it's about a third of what it takes to maintain a can of diesel in a year.
Thank your friends at the EPA for that, for choking these diesel engines that are so simple and so easy to maintain and such long life and so economical, even though the fuel is more money. Thank those fools in Washington. It wasn't Rudolph Diesel engine.
Good to go. And I just want to, I want to thank Aaron Cooper, the head of our bus garage. He took over for Tom Murphy when he retired. I want to thank him for being here tonight. And I also want to let people know who this person is who's sitting out there answering this question. He certainly, he was a mechanic prior to taking his current position with us. So I appreciate you being here tonight, Aaron, and answering those questions. So here are I just want to go back, and then we'll take more questions from the board and then from folks out there if you have them. Here's what you're voting on. Again, a spending plan of $53,452,809. Transportation purchases in the amount of not to exceed $450,000. Proposition 3, the funding of a capital reserve, actual deposit of $150,000. And as I mentioned, once you vote to put it in, it needs to be voted on to come out, and it's usually attached to a specific building project. And the energy performance contract, and that vote is so that the school district can capture an additional 10% state aid back on the work that we have planned to do. And lastly, for those 2 Board of Education seats, again, 2 petitions were received, Dr. Brian Steele and Mrs. Megan Borlang. Back to the budget calendar, I'll skip right to the vote. The vote is May 16th in the high school gymnasium from noon to 8 p.m. and we certainly hope that a lot of people will come out and vote. We like to have people come and let us know how they're feeling about our budget. Absentee ballot information is available upon request. I asked Mrs. Hensel if she could just provide the deadlines for absentee ballots so that anybody watching from home or watching later can hear it, as well as people in the room.
Sure. So if I need to mail you a ballot, I would need that request by tomorrow. But in person, they can request them right up until budget vote day, which is May 16th.
Is there a cutoff time on the 16th?
5 p.m. They have to be
5
returned to me.
We have to have them back by 5 p.m. on the 16th. And her email and telephone number is in the presentation. And just going back to why we're all here, the mission, vision, values, you can see that document up there. It hangs around the school in several places. It's about kids. We certainly understand that we ask our taxpayers and our residents for a lot each and every year, knowing that that increase has been zero, but it's still a lot. So we appreciate your support. And again, thank you for coming out tonight. And I'd like to start with the board. If there's questions from the board, we'll start there, and then we'll open it up to everybody from the public if you don't mind.
And just for the public, if you could grab the mic so the people at home can hear what you're asking and communicate that way. Okay, anything from the board?
Anybody,
Anybody from the
any
public?
questions from the community? Yes, sir.
I'm loud now. My concern with the huge increase in our budget, Dan, you were there, Kevin, you last week, the meeting that I hosted for the community, that this is a huge increase. It is exactly to the dollar, the amount of money is the increase in our state aid. Did you get the state aid figure and then back into it and spend your way into that extra money?
No, so we built the budget after, we actually started before January, but we built it in January when we got the first set of state aid runs from the governor's office. We don't do anything without having a number from them. We have priorities and things that we want to do, but we don't. Our final numbers didn't come in until after the board had approved the budget, knowing that we could adjust the budget if necessary if the state aid numbers came in lower. We actually had about another $550,000 that were in the January state aid runs from the governor's budget that we did not receive in the final. So I guess my answer would be no, we didn't back into it because there was more money in those first runs. Were we smart enough to look at some of those things that the governor was proposing and say, we're not going to use that in our proposed budget until it actually comes to fruition? We absolutely were, and I want to thank Kevin and the Audit and Finance Committee for that. Not that I wouldn't have had made the same recommendation, but Kevin came to the table with the money already backed out from what he's seen in previous years happen from the governor's proposal to when the final budget is enacted and signed, voted on by the legislature and signed by the governor.
It was a pretty big gift out of the state, of money out of the taxpayers' other pocket. I hope, we appreciate the 0% tax levy increase. Anyone would be foolish not to. Would we love the decrease? Absolutely, but it doesn't happen here. We're scared to death that if this continued revenue from the state doesn't stay on par with what we're doing, the taxpayers of Hudson Falls Central School District, which makes up parts of 7 component communities, but all of Kingsbury and Hudson Falls, that we could have an onerous tax increase if the state doesn't continue to play along. They're obviously very dangerous people down there, the way they spend money, and I'm afraid there's a day of reckoning coming. So I guess I caution you as a businessman and as a taxpayer, one of the largest taxpayers in this district, to please don't spend your way into any more money. You've got to keep some in the other pocket, because I think bad times are coming. And you just cannot allow, this is the largest of the 3 or 4, depending if you live in the village or in the town, tax bills that people get come out of the decisions that you make. Now, we are all in agreement that we're here for quality education for our kids, to prepare them with a foundation for the future. And I hope that we're not so busy running the school that we're forgetting the purpose, and that is to educate the kids. And I'm going to just go a little farther here and tell you about a 10th grade student in Hudson Falls not a special needs or special ed student, but just a good middle-class kid who applied for work in my business. We have a very simple job application, one that you'll find almost anywhere for an entry-level job. Not looking for a big resume, just a simple job application. The application that was left for my review was so disgustingly poor that I couldn't give it any consideration. And I did save it from the shredder, just as a reminder of what a situation we're in. The father, when they noticed we advertised for this same position, said, "Why didn't you consider my kid?" He said, "Well, it was an incomplete job application." So he forced the kid, when they were both there, to fill out a job application. It took this young man 40 minutes, and he used his cell phone to produce a very simple application. My son took another one, went in the other office and filled it out, just for the heck of it, to see how long it took. It took him 5 minutes. My son did it in a hurry, and you could read it. This boy took 40 minutes, and it was still illegible. So, 10th grade, by this time, you've got to have some life skills. You've got to have penmanship, and I'm not saying I don't even think you teach cursive writing, which suits me fine, because I was never good at it. But for a 16-year-old to not be able to block print or legibly print a job application, and to be basically illiterate when it comes to spelling, is not a good reflection on $53 million, or $49 million last year. I'm not picking, but we have to understand we're here to teach kids, not run the school. So I can't get that point home. I was interested in that presentation when we're trying to maintain high expectations. You know, no child left behind doesn't seem to apply. We are leaving whole classes of kids behind, and COVID didn't help it, because the kids got a terrible education during that time. They have no discipline to begin with. They weren't required to complete assignments. We have a blip in the radar of the youth of America during COVID that we're going to have a bubble of basic illiteracy for a lot of these kids, and they're going to require some special handling. And the other thing is, growing a positive culture, Dan, was on your presentation. And every day, someone in our community is either posting pictures of our over $1 million investment in Derby Park being destroyed, the property being disrespected, parents and grandparents not able to take little kids there because of the vulgarities. This afternoon, a group of 5 kids that are either students in our school or Fort Edward trying to climb on the roof of the Fort Edward ice cream stand to assumably do damage. We do have to maintain a positive culture, and we have to have high expectations, and we have to have discipline, or we're wasting $50 million of hard-earned money of the taxpayers of New York State. And I don't know that I can make this any more serious. I'm not trying to be a jerk to any of you guys. I put you through the ringer the other night, and then back again. And I promise you I will come back again and again and again. Because I, as a citizen of this community, and as one of the largest taxpayers, demand you do your job, not to run the school, but to teach these kids, to teach them respect, to give them disciplines, to get these stupid cell phones where they're passing God knows what around amongst each other when they're supposed to be getting lessons. You've got to get this stuff toned down. No matter how much money we spend, we can't throw enough money at this to solve the problem without the human intervention of both the teachers, the teacher assistants, and the administrators. And while we're at it, it's about time that these kids start respecting these bus drivers.
Got it.
Done. For now.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Obviously, you.
Not mad, I'm impassioned. I
No.
love this community.
Yeah, and I would say that I'll respond this way. Appreciate your comments. I know that you and I have had enough interactions. I feel like you and I have had enough interactions to know that I don't want anybody to be disrespectful to anybody. And that certainly isn't what we're trying to accomplish here at school. I don't want anybody not to be able to read and write. You know those things. I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate you saying them.
time for a change. That's all it is. It's gotta start now, Dan. We're spending a lot of money, we're throwing a lot of crap at the wall to see what sticks. We have got to make a change. These kids are coming out of here disrespectful, they're lazy, they're shiftless. I'm not saying all of them, but they're the ones that we're seeing the most of. It's not the Peyton Smiths that are making a name for themselves with academic and athletic achievements. It is the kids that are getting away with a lot of bad stuff. And parenthood is at an all-time low. Education doesn't start when the bus hits the curb. Education starts when the baby's born. We all come out the same way. We come out bare ass and dumb. And the only thing we learn is what we're taught.
Thank you. Other comments or questions?
I just had a question on the state aid payment for, say, $4.2 million. That's a one-time payment, or is it foreseeable future, or
That becomes our base.
that's number of days?
Yep. So when you look at the state aid, what I was talking about was the foundation aid, and there's several different state aids in that number that we used, it was like $34 million. So that, what we were owed before comes in, it becomes our base. So moving forward, generally what they'll do is they'll give you like a 3% increase on your foundation aid. That's in that base. It's not a one-time shot. So that will help us moving forward.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Other questions? Yes.
So was that the amount that New York State, actually, I think the school systems had to sue New York State, and then the lawsuit got dropped, and they said, okay, you can have your money? Is that what this piece
No,
was,
this can't be for
$4
fiscal.
million?
Yeah, that was the campaign for fiscal equity is that you're
Yeah.
talking about. Not that the two don't impact each other, but it's not the same.
It's not the same, so is there additional money coming from that, or no?
I wouldn't expect there to be.
Any more questions? Okay,
Could I ask one more?
sure.
What is an example of some of the programs that you said were dropped when we lost the funding that have now been reinstated?
Yeah, so,
What is your-
yeah, so what happened is through the years, and I know we have folks from our Teachers Association here, is when people retired, we didn't replace staff. Therefore, electives went away. As far as specific programs, we still had English, we still have social studies, but we didn't have any electives above and beyond what we were doing for state mandates. That was it. So actually, we had one of our administrators do a side-by-side comparison, some surrounding schools last year, and show us that we were far behind some local schools of similar size, a little bit larger, a little bit smaller, in electives that we offered. I don't have those. And I know I'm putting you on the spot. Do you have any specific numbers from that report? It's been over a year since we looked at that. It was prior to last budget year, and the person who did a lot of the work for it is sitting right behind you, to be perfectly honest. But we were showing that compared to students, I don't want to name other schools' names, that wouldn't be appropriate, we were behind. So that was what we prioritized last year, is trying to hit the departments where those people had many more offerings than we did. But it wasn't like they said, we're cutting, I'll use an easy example, the agriculture program. There wasn't one here, we have one here now. Because of what we're putting back in, we're trying to identify what students want to do and what works in our community for kids. So it wasn't necessarily that we wanted to put the same exact electives that were here 8, 9 years ago. We're looking for new things to do. So
So it's 14 or 15 courses between last year and this year, and it's also class size because you've added teachers back in this also.
right. So Mike's saying that it was 14 or 15 courses that we had lost throughout the years, and we've been able to reinstate many of those now. Not the same courses, but number-wise, this many offerings for our students. Other questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nobody else, we close the hearing.
Yep, so at this time, we're going to adjourn the budget hearing meeting, and once again, next, on the 16th will be our actual budget vote, so please come out and support the school district. And thank you for those who spoke up, Mr. Havens, Mr. and Mrs. Borling, appreciate that. At this time, we're going to convene with our regular meeting. If you want to leave at this point in time, as far as the end of the budget hearing, feel free to do that. You can stay if you'd like. Stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let me get rid of that. So we just have some routine items that we have to approve. Need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 4th, 2023. Also accept and order file the minutes of the Committee on Special Education for the dates that are listed. Accept and order file for the minutes of the Committee on Preschool Special Education for the dates listed. Should we do the same for the other ones too?
Yep,
Or get those
three
one?
separate ones.
Three separate ones.
Yep.
Can I get a motion for those? So moved by Amanda, seconded by Heidi. All in favor? Okay. We also need a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting on April 13th, 2023. Do we have a motion for that? So moved by Mike, seconded by Vince. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. And lastly, we need a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting on April 25th, 2023. Do we have a motion? So moved by Heidi, seconded by Amanda. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay. That moves us to Superintendent's report. Mr. Ward?
Yeah, so a couple of quick items, and then we have our favorite part of things. That's hearing from our students. So I just want to mention there too, so we can let them have full stage. The Lorenzen Singers are on my report. That's a select chorus group. It actually occurs at St. Lawrence University. Wanted to let everybody know who's here and who's at home watching that one of our graduates will be coming back to perform at the Strand. Caroline Martindale, she'll be there as part of that group, and that's on the 16th at 7 p.m. at the Strand. It's a great chorus. I will say I am a little bit biased because my daughter also goes to St. Lawrence and is a part of that group, but they're trying to go to the community of each of the seniors, so they'll be here that night. So if you have, after you vote and you want to hear a concert, please go on down. And then wanted to take a second and for the NYSBA Board Achievement Award, I do want to take a second and recognize Mrs. Heidi Anderkovics. I received this beautiful certificate. So the New York State School Boards Association does a recognition program where you earn points for participating in activities. And so with your attendance at the October New York State NYSBA conference, you went over the number of points. So you've reached 75 points, and therefore you have received this nice certificate from them. So I wanted to take a second and recognize you and present you with that. Put on your and at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Smith, our art department chairperson, and the floor is yours.
You're gonna have to come up. You're definitely gonna have to use the microphone for broadcast purposes. So we've been talking for a couple of years about trying to get on a cycle of curriculum reviews. So you'll have two reviews this year. Art going first. And science K-12, not just science research, but science K-12 next month. And that puts you at the start of your 5-year cycle. So Greg booked May of 2028 to be back here in front of us.
Sounds good. Okay, that's not exactly how Mike presented it to me.
I would just say that they are going first because over the last couple of years, the arts standards in New York State have changed. about 3 or 4 years ago, pre-COVID, they changed them. 2021 was actually their launch date. So the art department has done a couple years of tweaks to their program to make it match up with what's going on in the state. I would just also mention that in 2022, we added half a credit of studio art in 8th grade. So that's one more piece of high school credit that all of our students are coming with. This is not a just the top students type of thing. All of our students are coming with half a credit of art to the high school to carry that momentum towards graduation. All right, you're on.
Well, with the new state standards, they're very similar to what we grew up on as far as the national standards. They repackaged it. They're looking to hit certain components. Creating artwork in the visual arts is obviously number one. It's the most important part in our opinion. And then the performance part of it, which with the visual arts becomes more of the presentation or an art show or hanging artwork in the hallway. And then the reflection upon that artwork as well, whether that is a mid-project critique, whether that is reflective writing, whatever that component becomes is one of the standards that they're looking to achieve. So our department went through what we were teaching, how we were teaching it, what we were doing, and we're able to either tweak our current assignments or add new assignments that then we're able to hit all of those state standards. It just became a coding project, honest, for parts of it. You can look at an art assignment and they can, there's different levels of each of those components, and we're coding out if you want to just shortcut it. For us, that's not the most important thing. If it's something that Mike is looking at, it helps him break it down. But for what we do, it's pretty straightforward. The most exciting part, I think, is that we have added, we've taken a half-time position and made it into a full-time position by taking Jen and taking her from the middle school in the morning to the intermediate school in the afternoon to the kindergarten center a couple days a week in the afternoon. Ideally, we'd be at a point where she could be in one building or two instead of three, but we still have kindergarten over there in their own building. So that's nice to see our department grow. So we are a full 5 now? Full 4? Full 5 of us. So at the high school level, which obviously is where we have the most movement, because we're not adding a second, third grade art class or a second, fifth grade art class. Adding Jen to full-time allowed us to add that half-credit studio art component at the middle school. So all of our students are coming over with a half credit of studio art, which is helping them either get through that 1 year credit that they need at the high school level, or it's helping spur them to the point where they're excited about moving on and taking upper level classes. With the upper level classes, and I say upper level classes simply because they're not freshman oriented. They are sophomore, junior, senior mixed class level. They've taken studio art or exploration at the freshman level, and then we've added some new electives, which we've based upon student interest and things that they're doing, and looking to do that even more without changing the number of classes taught, but by rotating them year to year. We've added watercolors as a half-year credit, printmaking as a half-year credit. This coming year, we're going to be adding a sculpture class as a half-year credit, revitalizing the advertising class as a half-year credit. So those classes can kind of mix and match as kids come out of their half credit of health class or any other elective that they might have. So in January, they can pick up a new class to fill their schedule as well. So changing the classes, adding classes, that's the work that we've been doing the most part of. But you would much rather, I'm sure, look at the artwork than listen to me tell you about it. So that was what we did. I asked all of our teachers to add a slide or two of kind of what they were doing at each building level. And so I think Mike shared that with you, so you were able to see it. So that's kind of where we did. We put a few tabs in there about what we were doing with that work, but predominantly we're a visual learning group. So that's where we're at. So our kindergarten center, we have 2 teachers in the kindergarten right now, both part-time over there. Jen and Bethany are both at the kindergarten center, teaching in the classrooms off of a cart. So that's what they've been working on over there. Some examples of their work. We are doing individual building art shows as we go. So that's been good to present the work in the buildings. It means more to the families coming into those buildings than it does coming into the high school to see a first grade art project. So at the kindergarten center, and then at the primary school, Bethany is at the primary school full-time for first, second, and third grade. So some of the things that she's been working on. And then as we move on, she's there and at the kindergarten, like I said. And then when we get to the intermediate school, that is Jen. She's there, starts her day at the middle school every day, teaching studio art at the middle school, goes to the intermediate school, and then has 2 afternoons, I believe, where she's at the kindergarten center. So some of the examples of their work. Middle school, where Liz is teaching 6th and 7th grade, as well as a section of the studio art class. Rather than have one teacher teach the studio art class, the kids are taking a section with Liz, and then later in the year taking a secondary section with Bethany or with Jen, or vice versa. So they're getting 2 different teachers, which we thought was an important way, because obviously every kid gets reached by someone different. At the high school with Aaron and I, we have kids that sometimes bounce back and forth, and we have other kids that stay with each of us all 4 years. It is kind of, different. So in the studio art, we rewrote curriculum to push that class down to the middle school level, which is what is done in a lot of other school districts. So we took some of the pieces that we taught at the high school prior to that, and we rewrote them so that they fit better for the 8th graders. They're doing some drawing, and we've already noticed them coming in with some stronger skills. They're getting another section of art that they didn't get before. So they are coming in with some stronger skills, which is nice, some prior knowledge. So that has changed what we are doing with our current electives at the high school. Our studio art class and our exploration of art class, which are both entry level, now have some additional, there's not as much repeat teaching in that. They're coming in with that prior knowledge, and they're able to push it forward. So we're looking to, ideally, we will get to a point where we are satisfying all of that and pushing kids into either an advanced art class or a portfolio class, where we can start looking for kids that are going that direction through into college. But right now, there hasn't been a big need for that. We don't have a lot of students that are looking to go to school full-time for art right now, or we haven't recently. So these are some of the examples from our exploration of art class. Some of the things that we do with that in studio art we're basically a survey class. They're getting as many different mediums as they can, so that then they can go on to secondary upper level classes, ceramics. We're looking to potentially add an advanced ceramics class, just specifically a wheel throwing class. The half-year credit class of printmaking, where the kids come in and they're working with monoprints and block cuts and foam printing and silk screening and a little bit of everything. Is a totally different medium to work with than what they were doing prior in the year when they were in their watercolors class, where it was all painting. So they've got a lot of things that they can do. And clearly a lot of the pieces that we photographed are the ones that we have displayed in the back as well. And from some of the students that came with us as well tonight. Erin teaches photography. She teaches our high school studio art, our photography, our advanced drawing and painting classes. I teach right now the exploration classes, ceramics, watercolor and printmaking, and we'll have the sculpture class next year. So she was a photography major. It made sense for her to teach photography. I was a ceramics minor. It makes sense for me to have the clay.
Okay.
Wasn't always the case.
Yeah, do you want to, some students here tonight?
Yes.
Supporting the art program. Do you want to introduce some students? And
Absolutely.
if they want to say a couple words about art, fine. If they just want to say hello and be recognized, that's fine too. So, but you came out, students and faculty, to be here tonight, so we want to make sure we give you the opportunity.
Well, our faculty first, Liz Whitty at the middle school, Jen Peace at the, yep, you're gonna, yep, Jen Peace at the intermediate in the, every building. Bethany Plummer in the back in the primary and the kindergarten, and Erin Challen at the high school with me. I had with me Alexandra and Natalie and Peyton came with me. They have work here. Erin, you have Katie and Valeria. Sorry, I always screw that one up. Liz has.
Sixth grader, Hadley Young.
We had a few more on the docket to come, and they didn't make it for
That's May.
different reasons. Yes.
Any of the students want to talk about art, or?
You can do it from your seats, guys.
That's, if not, I just hope the board will join me in giving both the faculty of the art department and the students that came tonight a round of applause. Thanks for your efforts. We appreciate you doing what you do. Before we let him off the hot seat, any questions for Mr. Smith?
Yep.
Do you have any classes that kids are like more consider more popular, or like something you find that a lot of the kids are interested in?
They all want to take photography. Everybody wants to take photography, which is good, and Erin does a great job with it. It's unfortunate that we're at a point now where there's not any, it's all digital photography. We used to have a dark room, we used to have, so when Kodak went out of business, that kind of ended that, essentially. But they all like photography, they like to take that. A lot of kids they think they want to take ceramics, and they start off in that, and then they don't realize that it's a lot of work. But it varies year to year, honestly, with the groups of kids that we have. What I like is that we end up with such a cross-section of students. I have kids who are straight art students, that's all they want to do, and then I have athletes and occasionally some kids out of the music department that really want to, give art a try and stick with it. I think it helps that our high schools, that Erin and I are both involved in. She's been involved with working on the set for the musical. She's involved with yearbook. I coach. It helps bring in a different dynamic of our cross-section of our student population.
And one more question, some of the murals and stuff on the wall that your students do.
We are not a mural company. No, we don't do a lot of that. We've done some things as far as like this year with the posters for the teams and any other club or activity that wants that type of thing. We've been able to do that and add that, but as far as the wall paintings and stuff, that's not in the budget. So.
Got it. Other?
Actually,
Yes.
and I don't know if you can answer it or not, but you said students need 1 credit of art to graduate, right?
Yes.
Full credit. And they're coming over now with a half credit from the middle school.
Yep.
So I remember when my oldest son came, he was in the music department, and it was a scheduling thing to try to get art and
Yep.
music in there at the same time. Is that still an issue, or how are those kids getting that second half?
It's difficult. We have at the high school, we offer an art class every block of every day. There's a lot of offerings. It ends up coming down to a lot of times if those students are willing to take 8 credits of school. I mean, to take a class every block of every day without any break. To get those, when they take a music class, that's eating one of the blocks. You've got your your core electives that they have to take. It's, freshman year is very difficult to add anything. And then if any student ever gets behind in a class where they're doubling up on an English or doubling up on a math, that just sucks up their schedule.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of kids that can't get in, because we offer, I mean, we have, right now we're offering out of our 12 classes, 6 classes. 10 classes. Sorry, I have 5, Aaron has, you have 6. Both have 6. Both have 6. There it is. 6 classes, 3 different courses. But out of that, there is, I believe, 5 classes that are for anybody that can take. They don't have to have any prior.
So if they're senior, there's
They
still
can,
something
yeah,
that
you
they
can still
can
take
take
it,
to get
yes.
that credit
Yes.
requirement done.
Which I like having that mixed grade level, so it's not 30 freshmen. You had, yep,
The one credit is art or music.
Yes.
So technically, so music math credit
Yes.
is.
Correct. It's a
Yeah.
credit in the arts.
That was my other, all right. But sometimes you find kids, usually when they are musically inclined, they sometimes tend to also be on the artsy side of things as well. So it does
Very
make a
much
distinction,
so.
it's not in your control, but that they sort of have to pick between those two. They can't do both conveniently. Okay, thank you.
And Mark?
yes.
For those students that are talented in any one of the medias,
Yep.
at what age does it really start to click with them? Especially on your side as a teacher, that you see this student really has a talent for.
There's a lot of kids that come into our building in the high school level that have already, they're very, it's almost like seeing a kid who's very coordinated at an early age play baseball. Like you see it, that kid has it. They understand spatially, and they're able to understand color, and they're able to understand the way that you can move things on the page without changing the depth of the page. I think you can see it as early as middle school. I'm sure that Liz would say 6th grade,
Yeah.
even
Absolutely.
earlier. I mean,
Earlier, much earlier. We're just kind of sidetracking that. It's mostly a confidence issue. We don't see kids that really say, I'm good at this until 8th grade. Or you finally say, you are good, and you are good enough to go on. And that's when we're like, Greg, watch out
Yep.
for these
Right,
kids.
but someone who's talented and who already has that, you can see, like what Greg was explaining, that's very early, you can see that. Kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, you can see it.
and then it's important for them to continue to take those next steps. To go from being able to understand it and be able to do it, to then be creative with it and trust like they said, a confidence issue, trust their own approach so that they can really expand upon that.
Take it to the next level.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
For the photography class?
Yes, sir.
Are they also being taught photo editing and any applications?
Yeah. We do, the cloud version of Adobe Photoshop.
Okay.
Which there were some hiccups with that this year, so we're trying to get them ironed out next year. But
It's,
definitely editing.
as everybody in the art world knows, it's a Mac-based world, and we're a Google-based platform. So there's some limitations to what we can do. I'm obviously, and that's something where when Dan spoke about additional like professional development, like those are the things that we're looking at that we're lacking in 20 years in my teaching career, 24 years, 6 years, whatever it is. It's been a while. As far as the technology pieces of that, like for a graphic design program or a advertising class, those are the things that we need to continue to educate ourselves on so that we can offer it regardless of what programs are being run on the computer. And they do have, obviously, we have kids that go to BOCES and do the media arts program. They're doing some really cool stuff there. But all of our students don't go down that track. So, but it it is nice to see that what they've done with that program.
So we had those students at the last meeting.
Correct, yes, yep.
Sounded like that.
And those aren't always necessarily our kids that go. And when I say our kids, students who've taken art class.
Right.
They might just be just interested, just go. I'm like, how did we not get that?
It's important they found what works for them, right,
Absolutely,
Greg?
100%.
It's their journey, we're just trying to help get them there. Other questions?
I just have one quick question and then kind of a comment, but about photography. Are the kids using actual factual cameras?
Yep, we added 10 DSLR cameras in 2021, I think.
That the school owns?
Yep,
Yes.
yep, they stay at school, and so those actually have been,
Those are great.
life changing.
Mhm.
So, yeah, and we were gonna add some more, but they do have like different lenses to put on them, and,
Great.
yeah. So that was a good investment.
Yeah.
I think we get more buy-in from the kids when there's like nice equipment.
Yeah. And then my comment is for you students. I'm a speech pathologist, but I have taken all the art that I could possibly take, and I think you're super smart, because it's gonna allow you to look at things with a different perspective. And that's always a good thing moving on as an adult, and as a student, you wanna be well-rounded, and you wanna be able to be empathetic and understand from a different point of view, and art really does a great job of that. So I applaud you all, even if you don't have to take art. Take all the art you can take.
You want 10 more minutes?
That's a lot I can ask for. I've got a captive audience. I'm good with that.
I'm good.
Awesome, thank you.
All right.
Just want to give another round of thank you, everybody. So Mr. Smith went first. That means everybody else who has to present on behalf of the departments will be ready to go. So thanks for being a great model for everybody, Mr. Smith.
Release them before you jump.
Yeah, so this is the time of night where usually I say, we appreciate faculty, staff, and students for coming out. You're welcome to stay for the whole meeting. You're also welcome to go now if you need to. We realize there's a lot going on in the month of May. You may have homework or have to get up early. So that's totally up to you. We will not be offended. Do what you need to do, and thanks for being here this evening.
Bye, guys.
Okay. So do we have any public comments? Everybody clear the room? Okay. I shut the door on public comments, Greg.
I wanted to make sure that, the easels were a collaborative project with, Mr. Brayton's manufacturing class across the hall as well. So that was something that we knew going forward that we were lacking in the department, and it was an easy fix to incorporate his students into, to making those so that we have them for what will be in for the budget vote next week, 16th.
Correct.
And we'll have some artwork that's filling up some of that void in the gymnasium.
Thanks, Greg.
So thanks to Mr. Brayton for the easels
Yes.
through the manufacturing class too. I want to make sure we get that on the record and beamed out to the world.
Okay. So that concludes public comments. That moves us to our committees. We'll start with personnel. Mr. Canini?
There we go. The consent agenda is pretty much straightforward. There's normal things that are happening for this year, this summer, and starting for next year. But the one thing that I wanted to bring out or whatever is that Mr. Benefield has resigned. And after 20 years of dedication to the district, we'd like to thank him for that. Other than that, there's a couple of individual contracts that are on separate motions that I think Mr. Ward will be handling. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. So that's it.
Does anybody have any questions for Vince?
I had emailed you a question about a specific resignation.
Yep, I did respond back.
Oh, okay, I didn't get a notification, sorry.
So that,
I'll just look it
unless I
up.
didn't push send. But that specific individual was actually appointed to a different position last month, which replaces it.
Okay.
So they waited to resign until they were
Gotcha.
appointed.
Okay.
And if I didn't push send, let me know. But I think I did.
Sometimes I don't get the notification, so, okay. Thank you.
You got
And
it.
I deferred that to him so he could answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So does anybody have any other questions? So by consent, the regular portion of the personnel is approved. We will have two other items that we'll discuss in executive session that we'll come back and vote on those after. Okay, thank you, Mr. Panini. That moves us to athletics. Mr. Fitzgerald.
All right, thank you. So last week, the athletic director, Mr. Carpenter, and head coach Brett Watkins met with students at Fort Edward grades 6 through 11 to discuss the excitement of our merging programs for football and to review the opportunities they'll have during this merger. The coaches shared their contact information as well as preseason and summer workout information, as well as the game schedule as it stands. As part of that merger, we also had the game day cheering from Fort Edward that was joining us. Unfortunately, they've decided to back out of that merger. After speaking with their students, it seemed the level of interest and the commitment level, they couldn't guarantee that was going to happen. Some of those students, I guess, are participating in other sports as well. So it just wasn't going to work this year. Since that was already approved, we were able to send that that word there?
Merger dissolution form.
Thank you, that one. To section 2, so that's all set. And part of the meeting, they also discussed the athletic trainer options that we may have. Part of these could be hiring a full-time employee or contracting it out through a provider. For hiring an employee full-time, this would allow us to have somebody here during the school day as well as afternoon for practices and games. Contracting out may only allow us to have the person on site for specific games depending on their availability. So some pros and cons to both sides that we'll have to discuss further. More and more schools are bringing an athletic trainer on board. Could be a great asset for our students and our teams. And it would be different from our strength and conditioning coach that we currently have. And kind of the details in that, you guys should have that in front of you, the typical work activities. I think that's just about it. Is there any questions?
Yeah, with the merger on football, does that change our class?
It does not. We'll remain Class B.
Mike, I'm not sure if there's records still on file or not, but I know we did talk about the athletic trainer portion of this a few years back when Mr. Badisi was here. So I'm not sure if there's notes on that that Ryan can try to find. I don't know, Dan, if...
And Amanda brought that up during our meeting, but that was discussion previously. And then COVID kind of happened. I know folks are, I'm definitely sick of saying it, but it's the truth, and if it's the truth, I'm going to say it. Did have a conversation with Mr. Quincy, and our budget would support it if we're able to find a provider to do so. So Ryan's investigating that now, and I'll report back next month on what he's found, so you'll hear more about it. But I'll ask if I'll try to find some notes someplace.
Okay.
But Amanda definitely gave her a recap.
Yeah, and is Mr. Carpenter going to investigate the way we had kind of discussed it in the meeting? We're looking for a full-time potentially first, if there is anyone out there, and then if not, kind of go down to that part-time thing?
Yeah, I think he was going to look at both and contact other districts to see what success they had down both avenues and come back to us with whatever information he found in both directions. The committee that day sounded like they were more in support of a full-time person here that was able to provide more services throughout the day and cover more events than doing a part-time.
For sure.
But certainly we have to know what the cost is before we can make that decision.
I have a quick question. Putting the cart along before the horse, let's say we do approve an athletic trainer, we hire someone full-time. What happens when there's more than one sporting event going on?
Yep.
They have to be at the considerably more dangerous one?
We do share rates. I
Yep.
have the exact same.
What a shock.
Yeah, so we prioritize it, and what you'll see, and you'll see athletic trainers being assigned to be at one. Our campus is relatively small, and they're able to be contacted by phone to go to a different field if something occurs.
Right, like football here versus Derby Park soccer or something.
Right, or even put the two, football and soccer, side by side. A person is at one. The only other item I put on when we talk about football specifically is as part of our contract with Dr. Nielsen, he attends our football games. So
Oh,
we do
right
have
on.
additional coverage there.
Okay.
But you're exactly right. We prioritize one event. Sometimes you'll see at large campuses where that person has a golf cart or
Yeah.
some sort of vehicle with their bag and stuff in the back where they can move
Yep.
between different events very quickly.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for athletics? Okay, so that moves us to audit. Mrs. Ramon.
Thank you, Jeff. So we have quite a bit on the agenda here for audit committee again this month. I'll just go over some of the routine stuff, and then I might hand it over to Kevin for some of the budget-related things and some of the other items on the list. So we'll start with the treasurer's report for the month of March. In the general fund, we had $9.9 million in receipts, so that is a typical, that's kind of the spring sustaining balances, I believe they're called. Do I have that right, Kevin? That come in, so in March, every year. So that's kind of why that's a higher than normal, receipts there, and then that leaves us a balance of 7.6 in the general fund, and a total cash on hand of $9.7 million. So that puts us in a good spot through the end of the year. The extracurricular account balances, there's lots of activity in here, which is really exciting. We have some prom-related stuff, I believe, in here. There's lots of fundraising going on. And some other, wrestling had their banquet, and so there's been a lot of activity, which is always great to see. We will have a resolution for 2 new extracurricular accounts on there. That's the VEX Robotics, and then, what's the other one? Girls soccer, do I have that right? Sorry. Yep. So there's a couple new those resolutions there for that. The monthly bills are in your board docs, as they are every month, so certainly just like every month, if you have a chance to review those and you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, Kevin, if there's any questions there on all of the checks that are getting written out every month. The revenue status report is also in your board docs, as well as the appropriation status report. Does anyone have any questions on those or the warrants?
I had a question, but I don't know if it's under the warrants. I just need Kevin to remind me what the certiorari is.
Tax certiorari.
Yep, that,
Yep. It's,
is that under the
what we
warrants?
do right
It's
now?
yeah, you can. It is a resolution in there, but go ahead, Kevin, if you want.
So, yeah, so basically, what occurred is we had the Article 7 filed against the school district based on assessment. And what occurs on that is they go back 3 years on that. So, when it goes.
Is this
to-
the GE one or the Wheelabrator one?
No, this is, elevator.
Looks like, is it a private
This is,
residence,
Oh.
maybe?
This is the business, GLV.
Set-
Allen-
yeah.
It's just a random
Yeah,
address?
it's Allen's, I can't even say that word. Okay. Yeah, this is different than the GE. We haven't gotten anything with GE right now. But what occurs is they'll go in and they'll contest their assessment. The township actually represents everybody in those cases, and it was worked back and forth down to an amount. So the assessments went from, hold on one second. 1 million, actually this is for 2 years, 1,994,900 down to a revised assessment of 777,000.
Okay.
So those were the taxes, those were the taxes the school were responsible to refund. So that basically what we're doing, there's a resolution there. We will take that out of our tax tertiary reserve.
Okay.
That's one of our reserves, which we have approximately $200,000 in. This will come out of there, so it doesn't hit our general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that question, Heidi.
Yep.
Good question. So I think, did anyone have any questions on the treasurer's report or anything else in there?
No.
No? Okay. So Kevin, would you mind hitting up the budget as well as the budget transfer and then the
Sure.
night class?
So basically, we, we discussed the 23-24 budget, and all the important dates and basically what we did tonight. We discussed it there. The other item was there was a budget transfer for approval. It's over the $3,000. It's over the $3,000 change. It was $16,000. So basically by board policy, when we move money into accounts or from accounts, that has to be approved. Anything above $3,000 has to be approved. Well, Dan can go up to 5, and anything above 5 has to be approved by the Board of Education. And basically, it's just, we're just moving some money within the same accounts, just from one account to another to make sure that we have exactly what we need so the expenditure falls in the right place. So that's the budget transfer. The other item we had was night class. And what night class is, I actually wrote down the acronym. It's a rather unique one. New York Cooperative Liquid Asset Security System. So what that does is that allows us to take money that we have in our bank accounts that's just sitting there and put it into night class, and they receive competitive rates for interest. And what's occurring is we have two different options now. We have our bank that has an ICS account, which is basically an enhanced account with us with increased interest rates, and NICLAS. So it gives us two different options to move money back and forth, where one may be, a couple higher interest rate, we can move from one to the other, and vice versa, back and forth. So we'll keep that. So what we're looking for tonight is we'll end up doing a resolution to allow us to use them as an investment, basically, so that we can take some of our money out of our general fund and put it over there until we need it, and then move it back and forth. At the same time, we are still doing this with our bank also, but we're gonna have two different options, which will allow us to maximize interest.
And I think we had said in the budget presentation, you noted the interest, that increase there, and so that's, this is part of where that increase comes from, so.
Kevin, forgive me, I'm not financially
Nope.
savvy. Is this, it's like another bank account, or is it an investment per se where it has a chance to go down, or like it's
Can only go
steady?
up.
Okay.
Yep, it can only go up, and it's collateralized, so it can only go up. The big difference will be, what's the interest rate at the bank, what's the interest rate with them, and we can kind of move back and forth, and we can move them from each place daily,
That was my next
if we
question.
want to. Yep.
Okay.
So, yep.
I think that was it.
Can you go?
Yep, all we need is the
I think we have
resolution.
just a bunch of resolutions.
Okay.
Yep.
So for regular action, we just need a motion to accept the March treasurer's report. By Amanda, seconded by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. We do have 5 different resolutions here. So be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the tax certiorari for properties at 17 through 19 Allen Street in the amount of $28,988.44. Have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Crystal, seconded by Heidi. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Second, be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the budget transfer in the amount of $16,000. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Crystal, seconded by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That carries. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the creation of the extracurricular account for the girls' soccer team. Do we have a motion?
So,
So moved by Mike, seconded by
Second.
Crystal. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the creation of the extracurricular account for the middle school and high school VEX clubs. So moved by Crystal, seconded by
Here's Amanda on the first.
Amanda,
I'll second it.
seconded by Crystal. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. And lastly, be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the ability to move money into NICLAS. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Crystal, seconded by Heidi. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to abstain on that one.
Okay. Mark abstains. That carries. Okay. That concludes the audit report. So next, transportation, Dr. Steele.
Yep, we have a start of a new inspection cycle on April 21st. We have 5 out of 5 so far. You can read our trip report there. There's also an update on our bus fleet. Our 266 passenger buses are on schedule, and the notable piece of information on the report is Sheriff A. Jones, one of our senior drivers. I'll read that little paragraph that Mr. Cooper wrote. After driving with the district for 34 years, having a 33-year record of no accidents, our senior driver, Cheryl K. Jones, has retired. Her dedication to her job was like no other. Many will miss her, and we certainly thank her for her dedication.
Any questions for Dr. Steele? And again, thank you for Cheryl for providing 34 years of valuable service. Thank you so much.
That's awesome.
That's great. And if she knows anybody, has friends that could come help us with bus driving, we could use that too. Okay, that moves us to buildings and grounds. Mr. Gallo?
Thank you. Had a great meeting, some good news coming out of the meeting. First of all, and I know you got the update from Dan's report, but we'll just go over a few things here briefly. Just a reminder, we do have a policy and an application for the naming of any of the venues, so please keep that in mind in case you're asked. Capital project update. We're actually a little bit ahead of schedule on the auditorium and proposing around mid-July for a completion, so excited about that. On the negative side, we are a little bit behind on the library because of some cost overruns, and obviously we've discussed that wall issue. But we're very confident that the project will be done on schedule. The entire project will be done on schedule by the 31st of December. So everybody cross your fingers, and we're hoping for the best on that. The district is getting some quotes on a traffic study for the entire district with a focus on the middle school and the high school. And that will be ingress and egress and a few other options possibly, but we're waiting for the quotes back on that. The capital outlay project, that set aside, that $100,000 that we can spend on a project. The district is looking at what's called a safety shield on glass. It's a additional security measure on windows that will coordinate with the capital project. And those will be placed on as many windows as we can get them on, the ones that are ground level. And Dan and Kevin, there's anything else I missed?
You nailed it. I'm going to add one thing. When Mark says December 31st, that's for all final cost reports to get in. We are expecting that the actual construction be done much closer to September than December, but for anybody who hears that and says, oh my goodness. Yeah, no, that's we're saying. So we're still looking at actual brick and mortar construction being mostly completed by the opening of school next year. But we want to have those final cost reports because that affects our funding of the project by December 31st.
Did I zone out during the property acquisition? Or did you not talk about that?
Did you want to?
Yeah, so we had a conversation a while ago now with one specific property owner. Part of that going forward with anything is the traffic study. So that is the step that is key in everything.
Okay.
Everything and anything. I'm going to defer to Kevin because he's been working on that. Time frame for a traffic study.
Time frame for a traffic study, I'm supposed to hear back this week from TAS, which is the big company that has done many of them. I spoke to the person on the Zoom. I spoke to a person from there on a Zoom meeting, described exactly what we were looking for, because depending on any pieces of property that we may be looking at, When DOT gets involved, we're gonna need a traffic flow study. We need one anyways, just to have a new set of eyes, look at how the traffic flows go, what they think that we can do. It's great to bring somebody like that, and that's what these guys do. They worked up in Queensbury. I just get the name from Tim Place, who's the business official up in Queensbury for many years. They did an excellent job up there. Like I said, I'm just waiting to hear back with a price from them. Within the next week, most likely, that's who we'll probably end up going with. And they were talking, hopefully being able to come in before the end of school, being able to observe for a couple days. I'll make sure and put a belt at middle school in the side, but being able to observe, and that'll allow them to start to look at different traffic flow options that we can have. We have some ideas here that we've come up with, but it'll be good to get their input too and see if they kind of have the same ideas that we do as we kind of try to get some relief valves when it comes to traffic, especially at the beginning of school and the end of school.
Yes.
So.
I just want to make sure that I say it. As his time grows short, I want to thank Mark for his work on that and the stuff that he brought to the meeting last time. So I appreciate it. There was a couple of ideas that he had that were new even last time, but they still revolve around a traffic study. So appreciate the work. And then
One question on the traffic study. Is there any collaboration that can be done with the Village of Hudson Falls? Because I believe they've had one done relatively recently with some of the road work they've had.
Thank you. The only spot that I would see a possible collaboration would be down at the kindergarten center, because when you look at the two main focal points are going to be up here between these two buildings. And basically, I mean, that middle school something has to be done there. It's just, it does. I think people would agree with that. I've gotten some feedback from people on that one. And also the high school, up here it's starting to cause an issue. Down at our elementary schools, we're still gonna have them look at those to see if there's a way that we can do it better. But the main focus is gonna be up at these two buildings, and then a secondary focus. The K Center is a whole different, because we're kind of landlocked there on exactly what we can and can't do down there to begin with. So that may need to be.
Parking lot down there made it any easier? Parents parking in the public lot?
Mr. McTagg, has it made any easier in your view?
Well, what that does is it causes foot traffic. That goes across where the buses are. So, the other thing that's important there is not only are we landlocked, but we don't own the land. We borrow a lot of that land, and we've had gracious hosts there. But yes, the parking is better. It was, I think, 10 years ago that we worked with HF, the village and the PD to make Clark Street parking one side, so nobody dies. And it still is not necessarily the most, traffic and pedestrian friendly environment, although it's greatly improved in the past.
So more to come is what I would say.
The property acquisition.
The traffic study for specifically for the ins and the outs of how to get into the school and how to leave the school for the traffic safety. Is that what this is
Yeah,
for?
so our number one concern is safety of people coming to and from, and students walking to and from school as well as entering.
And the traffic pattern, to see
Possibly. So I will say this, based on the committee conversations, nothing is off the table. If it's a good idea that solves our problem, and that's why we're trying to use professionals that do this all the time to take a look at it differently. As I say many times, I think I have great ideas, but I'm one person, and the last thing we want to do is undertake this thing that's been commented on by our public, including the board members around the table, because we're going to get one chance to do something different and do it right. We want to make sure we've had everybody look at it, so that later on somebody isn't like, well, why didn't you just move this over here 4 feet? And that solves 10 more problems, and we haven't had some other folks look at it. So that's where we are.
Okay. We discussed the property acquisition.
The one property acquisition, the follow-up was that at the time of our meeting, the state had not passed its budget, so I haven't heard back from our legislators. So that's still on my follow-up, that's still on my to-do list.
Okay. Okay. So any other questions for Mr. Gallo? That concludes building and grounds. Now we'll move to policy. Mrs. Landsman.
Okay. There is one policy on here for a first read, policy 7220, graduation options or early graduation or accelerated programs. Basically, if I could summarize it the way Mr. DiCaprio did, this proposal authorizes the district to pay the tuition costs for the college classes students take while they're with us here in school. So it better puts us in line with the other school-funded student programs like PTAC, the ECA program, IB, and New Visions that we have already. As far as the cost, if we had done it this year, there's a figure here, it'd be $35,628. We expect the price to be higher in future years since more students are now going to have the ability to take these courses. We're estimating $50,000 in any given year, and Mr. Palenzi has given the thumbs up on this expenditure. That's always our first question. What did Kevin say? Any questions?
I'm gonna add, so it's part of us trying to make sure that things are available to all students, not the haves and the have-nots. We had a fairly good conversation, or I would say fairly good length conversation about, so if kids can't pay, what do they do? And the answer is, they can't take them. It's good to know that this is only for courses that are attached to our school programs. So if a student goes and takes a summer school program or takes a course in the evening that isn't attached to programming through our counselors, they're on their own on that. But we do have a lot of courses that are offered through here, and we want kids to be able to take them. Better life outcomes.
It's possible for a student to leave here with up to 30 credits. We can figure it's about $300 per credit. We can do some quick math there for what the bill would be.
And it will not be retroactive. As Mr. Palenzi has asked a few times, it would be prospectively only. And that was my last comment on that for tonight.
Okay, any other questions for policy? Okay, that moves us to advocacy. Mrs. Andrikovics.
Okey dokey. So I forgot to tell Kelly when she was asking me about the advocacy agenda, to remind you all that there's a May ASBA meeting coming up. And although I can't make it, I recommend any of you who can to go, because this one has students there who have done great things for their community. All of the ASBA and NISBA things are important, but this is a really meaningful one. Yes, ma'am?
When is that, and is it too late to respond?
I think it's the 21st.
I think I meant to, and then.
I think.
it's
Or did I? You did not, okay. Do you want me to get you added? I gotta look at my dinosaur paper calendar.
Was Ryan King our kid? Was Ryan our kid last year?
That's the 18th.
What was the 18th?
It's next Thursday.
Tim, was Ryan?
Was your son part of this book? Was he our school board association student last year?
Yes.
Do you mind just saying it? I think we
We're
were
at-
at the thing together, right?
Yes, we were.
Do you mind saying,
Do you mind saying a few words? Sorry, it seems like
10 years ago, I'm like, is that 2 years ago? No, I wasn't here 2 years ago. Do you mind saying a few words about your experience with that as a parent?
It was fantastic, it really was. The students were great, the whole, atmosphere was great. It really was, it was impressive, it really was. To listen to each student, and what they were doing, and their achievements, it really was a great experience. Dan and both, Mr. Benefield were there, along with all the other administrators from all the other districts. It was quite the group.
if you get a chance to go to one, that's a great one to go to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You will leave humbled by the accomplishments of the kids that report out on what their community service has done to shape their life and where they're going. Thanks,
So
Tim.
that was the thing I forgot, sorry about that. And then really just the main thing in advocacy is now that we have a budget, I had emailed to the advocacy committee the highlights of the final budget. None of it was really any of the surprises. Dan said we were pretty well prepared the proposed high impact tutoring set aside, and that is something that we did into being amendment.
I'm gonna speak to that if that's okay too.
Yep, and then I just have one more thing after that, so don't let me forget.
So in looking
A
at.
lot of pressure to put on you.
And
sorry.
so, and you heard me address Mr. Havens in the group earlier. So what they did is that $530,000 in set aside just went away. They didn't, we were advocating that they allow us to use it for any purpose we wanted to use it for. That did not happen in the final budget. The money just went away, and I'll put it out there again. So thanks to Kevin and the audit committee for not including that in our budget in any way, because we would have been in a much different situation if that was what we had done. Sorry.
Yes. And then now I've lost it.
Sorry.
No, it's not you, it's me. Let me pull up my notes again, maybe it'll jog my memory. Sugar plums, it's gone. I'll yell out, I'll call out if it pops back in, sorry. Oh, I remember. Okay, sorry, what a wild ride. It's been a long week, it's only Monday, right? I just wanted to kind of tip our community tonight. This is the most people I've ever seen at a budget hearing, and I think it's really important to stay informed. And most of them have left now, but if you're, watching at home, it's important to stay informed, it's important to show up, and I will love it every time it happens. So, now I'm done.
Any questions? Okay. Perfect. That concludes our committees. We have one thing on new business. It's a field trip request. Mr. Farrell, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Do you want to say anything about it?
I would. This opportunity, I'm not going to take much of your time. I just started getting the permission slips in, and the numbers that I proposed, that's the high end. I think I'm only going to have probably 10 to 12 students. I think if with 12 students, I can get 2 chaperones. Amtrak would be okay with that. So this is the highest amount that I would be asking for, but it may come in less if we have fewer students. I'm beside myself, excited at the prospect of being with students to see a show that they study. It's a pinnacle for my career.
And that show is Fat Ham? Is that
Fat Ham.
Fat Ham on Broadway?
It is a comedy, kind of
Oh, it's,
on
oh.
Hamlet.
Awesome.
Much happier.
Perfect.
Untypical of Shakespeare, not everybody does.
So if everybody had a chance to read it, as you stated, it's a day trip on May 31st. It's a one-day trip. And they will be taking the train down to,
School bus to the
Yep.
train station.
okay.
And
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? All right, so be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the field trip request to the American Airlines Theater. Do we have a motion? So moved by Mark, seconded by Heidi. All in favor? Opposed? That carries.
Awesome.
Thank you
Okay.
for doing that. Great opportunity.
Yes.
it's been such an honor. It's one of those emails that gets forwarded to whoever reads it, and I throw it out. And why not? I'm going to pursue it. We've had this teacher in residence remotely for a month, and she is a poet herself, published poet. So this opportunity was just an absolute blessing, and I'm thrilled that I can give it back to the community in terms of something important.
Great.
Got it.
Excellent.
Enjoy the trip, enjoy the show.
Yes, enjoy.
That's awesome.
Okay, so we do have a need for executive session for the purpose of two personnel matters, and we will have another discussion on the DASA appeals.
Correct.
Okay.
Just before we go out, Want to let anybody watching at home know that we do plan to end the broadcast at this time. We're not going to bring the broadcast back on. There are 2 items that the board may take action on when they come back out of executive session, and those would be having to do with contract negotiations with Managerial Confidential, and Mr. Palenci and Mr. DiCaprio will not be coming back on to the video for that. Obviously, that information will be included in the minutes of the meeting when they're released, once Mrs. Hensel gets them done.
Okay. I need a motion to enter executive session. So by Amanda, seconded by Mike. All in favor? Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.